We thank you so much for watching Law School Made Easy at Law School Made Easy 256. In this video, I want to discuss how to answer Tort Law 1. We are going to focus on the different topic that you cover in this semester, and I'm going to try to summarize for you to give you what does the examiner want you to discuss. Now, if you check under tort law, you have different topics. The first topic is the history of tort. Of course, under there are many other classifications: Gentile, Mercantilism, Feudal, Society, Industrial Capital, Capital Finance, and then you have the slave, and then all others. Then you have the reception clause. Here I mean when the tort law was introduced in Uganda, and then we cross to the trespass to persons, where we discuss malicious prosecution, false imprisonment, assault, battery, and then we go to trespass to land, and then we have trespass to goods, and then we have vicarious liability, and finally we have defamation. So in this video, I'm going to handle each of those topics to show you what the examiner expects from you and what you should have learned. I'm not going to go into the details of those topics, but it's a summary video of all those things. Number one, under the history of tort, first thing you should notice is, if you look at the Gentile society, the Gentile society, this society started when people were primitive, okay? People were very primitive. They were depending on gathering food, all those things. Then along the way, in the Gentile society, they started to develop. They introduced hunting, iron smelting. By the time we left Gentile society, agriculture had been introduced. Now, after appreciating all these aspects, especially under tort, we are appreciating the developments in every section, in every society. What development came up in the Gentile? That is the moment you appreciate that by the time we left the Gentile, they had introduced agriculture. So meaning that we go to the slave society when agriculture is introduced. Okay? Now, under the Gentile, only appreciate what are those stages where every new aspect was introduced, what was introduced in every stage under the Gentile. But most importantly, appreciate that agriculture was now introduced as we go to slave society. Now, under the slave society, you have entered the slave society with agriculture. Now, note, in Gentile, there were no torts that were developed. But you find that the history of all torts starts from the Gentile. Because when they introduced agriculture in the Gentile as one of the last stages, we go to the slave society when agriculture was there. Now, under the slaves, it means that we have the masters and the slaves. The masters want the slaves to work on their plantation, their agricultural plantation. Now, because of that, we are seeing torts beginning to develop. Okay? Torts now, land is becoming a means of production. So torts like trespass, they begin to erupt. Now, under slave, look out for the slave society and see what developed. The slave society, what is it trying to give us? Where is it taking us? And identify which torts developed in this society. 2, what were the activities that were there in this society? 3, what is the reason behind that activity? If you're saying agriculture was growing, we were slaves, what was the reasoning behind the agriculture? 2, if there is any tort which developed in the slave society, then tell the examiner that no, look here, this tort which developed in the slave society, okay, developed because of this. They want you to discuss, why do we have that tort in that society? Why did that tort come up? That is what you must focus on. Then from there, we go to the feudal society. Now, in the feudal society, what developed there? Who are the feudal lords? Okay? Who are the serfs? Okay? Now, tell us what is happening in the feudal society. What developed there? We see trade starting to come up slowly. At the end, we see this, all those activities. But the most important, identify the development in the feudal society. After you have identified the development, look at the torts that have developed in that society, and now say, why are these torts developing here? There is a reason why every tort developed in a given society. There is a reason why that tort came up. The moment you don't establish and you tell the examiner why that tort came up, why that tort, why did all those torts develop in that society? Look at the way of living, that how were people living in this society? Feudalism. What was the means of production? If they say the feudal lords and the serfs and the others, who are they? Okay? We see the migration in the feudal. People are migrating from this place to another. Why? What brought about that? In other words, in this video I'm telling you, when you're reading the society, read the page line per line. Appreciate, what does this line mean? Okay? And then you proceed. Then you go to mercantilism. Now, under mercantilism, here we see the boost of trade. Trade is at its highest. Now, when trade boosts in the mercantilism, there are torts which are associated with it. Now, those torts begin to develop. The question is, why did those torts develop in the mercantile? So your role is to, one, identify, okay? Your role is to identify in every society which tort developed there. And why did that tort develop? Colleagues, I repeat, they are questioning you, why did that tort develop at the time? Okay? That is what they want you to explain. Why that tort? Why that society? And then you can only appreciate those if you know the activities which are coming up, which are there. The activities are the ones that lead to the development of every tort in every society. Okay? Let's go to now the industrial capital. Okay? Industrial capital. When you are looking at the industrial capital, we are saying that, appreciate, under the industrial capital, what was happening? Remember, industrial, meaning there were industries that developed and all such things. So what are the things, torts which developed there? If you look at industrial capital and finance capital, there are torts like defamation which grew up there. Defamation and other defenses, non-fit injury, voluntary non-fit injury, contributory negligence, common employment, all those. Now, why are these defenses developing in the industrial capitalism and finance capital? Why? What were the activities in the industrial capital? Look at those activities, and then you begin to appreciate and say, okay, now, because there were industries in this capital, workers would get injury, and the bosses, the owners of the industry, wanted to run away from liability. That is why they introduced things like contributory negligence and others. Look out for the reason. Why do we have contributory negligence? Why do we have voluntary and unfit injuria in this common employment? What does it mean? Look at the activities and what developed there. Which tort, which defenses. Then you can be able to know the reasons behind those torts or those defenses. The same will apply to finance capital. Then we look at the reception, the tort in Uganda. Now, when you're discussing the tort in Uganda, okay, these are things they want to be examining you. The 1883 or 1783, I can't remember the year, Judicature Act which was introduced. Look at the statute of general application which was brought. Look at the reception clause. Okay, look at that case of Wava Holdings and Uganda Motors. How the case was decided. That is how the tort was introduced in Uganda. Look at those statutes of general application, the Judicature Acts which were introduced. Look at the case of Uganda Motors and Wava Holding. Look at the reception clause. When we begin to use the English laws here, it means that even the torts were now inherited. They came to Uganda. Then from there, we cross to defamation. No, let's first cross to trespass to persons. Okay, now I'm going to handle trespass to persons, trespass to goods, and trespass to land at the same time because they require the same thing. Now, if they ask you about trespass to goods, colleagues, the moment a question is requiring you to discuss the elements of trespass to goods, detenue, and others, what you first write, this paper, members, is about the history. The moment the question is about trespass to goods, you go back to the society and you identify in which society did the trespass to goods start. You first give the history. Even when the question is direct, for example, assuming they ask you, discuss the elements under trespass to goods. Direct question. You don't discuss the elements straight away. You first go back and you begin to trace the history of trespass to good. Why is it there? Why is it a tort? Where has it come from? And up to where we are. And then you give the elements. The same applies to trespass to persons. If the question is requiring you to write about battery or assault or malicious prosecution or forced imprisonment, all these torts have a society where they developed from. First, take the examiner back to that society. First, discuss that society. And you say, under this society, the trespass to assault happened in this way. It was introduced because of this. This is the reason why it came up. And then you begin to discuss the elements. The same applies to trespass to land. Then let's go to nervous shock, psychiatric harm or psychiatric injury. Members, this semester is about history. The only thing they are questioning you about nervous shock or psychiatric harm is one, the primary and the secondary victim. You must show what was the position for someone to succeed in the tort of nervous shock. And you say that you had to be involved, meaning that you were supposed to be a primary victim. Where you were not a primary victim, you would not recover. Now, you give the history. You begin that case of Alcock. There are many cases. Alcock, you continue trying to show how did the principles change until when you reach secondary victims. The Cultus case and others. Victoria Railway. You begin from those cases showing what developed in this area, what developed here, what developed here, what this is how the nervous shock kept on changing up to when we reached the secondary victim, and then you explain what are the secondary victims. You also look at the rationale behind the primary victims, or behind the fearing to come to secondary victims, the floodgates. Why did they want to open the floodgates? So you only look at the primary and secondary. The cases there are Victoria Railway, Cultus, Page, Victoria Railway versus Cultus, Alcock, Yorkshire Constable, Police, Page Smith, the White's case, very many cases. McLean versus O'Brien, all those cases come into play. But to those of you who want nervous shock, I have like a small case. The cases, how they move in their order. You can inbox me. My number is in the bio. You can inbox me. I share with you the history of nervous shock. So now let's go to vicarious liability. Now, in vicarious liability, of course, we have come across this. You know the meaning of vicarious liability. You are held responsible for a tort of another. Now, vicarious has been divided, okay? Has been divided in different... Now, under vicarious, they want you to explain how can somebody be held liable for the tort of another. So they have given you scenarios in the course of employment. Now, when they say in the course of employment, look at those different categories they have given you. But you are looking out for one thing. How can one be liable for the tort of another? You look at those different aspects. For example, if I'm in the course of employment, if I am in the course of employment, and I'm told to guard, let's say, Cham Tower. I'm at Cham Tower. I'm supposed to work at Cham Tower. Then I leave Cham Tower, I go for a party in Mukono. As I'm coming back to a party in Mukono, maybe I knock someone. And then you say that you knocked someone, therefore your boss is going to be held liable. But you were coming from Mukono. You are not at the place where you are expected to be. Okay? So, that is what we mean by vicarious liability. Okay? Vicarious liability. So, when discussing that, discuss all those different scenarios which have been given in your textbook. But remember the principle, he who works through another works for himself. Okay? Look at those control method, the benefit theory, the control theory. All those theories would help you to establish. Also, look at the aspect of the independent contractor, what happens, cost of employment. All those are very important in establishing the tort of vicarious liability. Then look at the case of the Ugandan cases. There are very many good Ugandan cases which can be and explain to you more about vicarious liability. Then we go to defamation. Even vicarious, sorry, it's said in the finance capital, you take back to the history. Even defamation, you first give the history, and then you can come and you begin to discuss those things. So defamation, you must appreciate the definition, okay? Somebody of reputable character, good standing in society, are the things which you must know very well. And then the differences between slander and innuendos, the elements of defamation, and then very important, you look at the defenses. Defenses are very important. Then now there are some defenses which were developed in some societies of defamation. So you bring all that history of defamation right from the societies, and then you explain here. Okay? All those, the elements, the defenses, appreciate them. We assume by now you know all those things. So unless a team or a group of people want personal engagement, we are available. My number is in the bio. We can always come and we engage and we discuss in length. This video, I have not discussed the content. I have given you what the lecturers expect of you, unless I have forgotten a topic. But this semester, those are the topics we expect you to be examined from. Thank you for watching Law School Made Easy at Law School Made Easy 256. Subscribe, share, like our videos. Until next time, goodbye.